Check, check, check. One, two, three. In the place to be. We see. All right, there we go. Welcome. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. And welcome to another edition of Should My Money Be Scared with Agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007. And that'll be me. And the series is geared around the real estate industry and based off of how COVID-19 has been affected different aspects of the real estate business, of the real estate industry. Hey, Miss Vet. And I've been speaking to different people that has been in different aspects, different strategies, investment strategies of real estate. I've spoken with realtors, rehabbers, mortgage lenders, hard money lenders, title companies, and so on. And one of the main things people have been asking me is with how are the landlords holding up with everything? So today we're going to speak to a landlord and also property manager, Kyrs Housley. But before we move on, yet again, my name is Agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007. And if you guys have any questions, any comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. And after this, go follow me at Agent Cory Banks 007, or you can email me at agentcorybanks at gmail. And if you missed any of the past shows, go to YouTube and which is Agent Cory Banks on YouTube and check out some of the past shows that you missed. So, without further ado, Kyrs,
In the
how are you?
building.
Welcome.
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I am amazing.
That's good.
S-
Can you hear
So,
me okay with the
oh,
earbuds?
I hear perfectly, perfectly.
Okay, perfect.
So
Perfect.
let me start off because you know I made a mistake, right? And I told you, look, I don't have a problem. I made a mistake. Now, as long as I've known you, I've known Kyrs. So of course I'm,
Hmm.
trying to be professional, trying to do the professional thing, and then I go on your Facebook page and I'm like, let me get the real name up there, and I messed up. So can you help me out with that, please? What did I
Kyrs
miss?
Housley. Kyrs Housley. Just Chris, Crystal, Chrisita, friends and family, and everyone call me Chrisita. So
Okay, and I
you're
haven't made
welcome
it.
to.
I haven't made it to the real friends and family list, so I still have Kyrs.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I'm no longer little Chris. So especially with the couple of these little quarantine pounds, I'm a little puffy Chris.
Look, don't get me started, please. Don't get me started. So, so
What can you do, you know?
well, first, how are you holding up with the whole COVID-19, the quarantine, and all that good stuff?
Doing well, actually doing well. It kind of has been waves a little bit.
Hmm.
It's probably the best way to explain it. The first, 2 weeks was spring cleaning, the way that I probably should be cleaning and
Hmm.
clean every inch of everything and straighten up all my books and files and clean up all the folders and little
Right.
missing initials here and there. And I was on it. And then week 3 and 4, it's like, I wonder how long I could go without cleaning the house before it really needs it. And then it was like, I could probably stand to eat some food I shouldn't be eating right now. I
Yeah.
should
And then
probably stand to, skip a few workouts since the gym's closed and
right.
making excuses, this and that. And then it was about 2 weeks of that. By the time mid-April came around, I said, no, we kind of doubled down on everything, getting back in line with fitness and bookkeeping and, you know, um, of course, reaching out to tenants and landlords
Hmm.
alike. It was interesting because a lot of uncertainty,
Well,
a lot of
before well,
uncertainty.
well, before we get there, I need you
Hmm.
I need you to let the people know who you are. What of course we're talking about landlords and how COVID-19 has affected that aspect of the business. But first, tell them who Kyrs Housley is.
So, Kyrs Housley, real estate agent, licensed real estate agent with Keller Williams Legacy, head of house keys with Housley, team there, small real estate team. We also have a property management company, which we all do in house. We also flip and renovate houses. We also do tenant placement, short term rentals,
Oh,
a little bit of everything.
yeah, we have a lot to
So,
talk about.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's
Yeah.
certainly been interesting, and I would say, I was probably on 3 to 4 different webinars, podcasts, this and that every single day, and it's like, stay inside unless you want to go outside. But you can go
Right.
outside, just don't be around anyone. But you can
Right.
be around people if you have a mask on, but your mask actually isn't that safe, so you should probably just stay inside. Right. So it's like there was no real clear information, I feel, that was coming from, you get stuff from CDC, but even that's like, hey, self quarantine.
Right.
And then it's like, well, how much can I self quarantine? I need groceries. I need to still ride around. I need to show houses. I have empty houses that need to be shown. I have occupied houses that need to be shown. I, have houses that are in the middle of rehab. Do I not
Hmm.
allow the construction crew in now? Like, it's a lot of uncertainty. And I think as time passed, people got more relaxed. At first, it was no one's going to work, no one's coming to work.
Right.
I had, contractors telling me, well, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to bring my son who works, but the whole crew isn't going to be in there. And, pushing back dates and times, houses that were supposed to go on the market that are occupied weren't able to go on the market. And honestly, they didn't go to market because that's what I suggested. I told my
So
clients, look, I don't feel comfortable bringing strangers through your house during a
right.
pandemic.
So it wasn't a market thing where it didn't go on market. It was actually your suggestion.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I definitely chose health over business, and chose I still feel like I made the right move. And it's interesting because I was definitely paying attention to the numbers. And anytime inventory doesn't go to market, shortage of inventory creates prices to increase.
Right. Right.
So you do have some demand that goes down because lenders restricted all of their money, right? So
Hmm.
many lenders did. I had a lot of hard money lenders that even said, we're not doing anything anymore because in 6 months, the market's going to collapse and we're going to pick all these properties up for pennies on the dollar. So I'm waiting for the pennies on the dollar thing to occur, which, some of the very seasoned investors that I work with was like counting down, it's going to happen any day now.
Right.
And then other ones were like, look, I'm going out here and I'm cleaning up house while there's no other buyers out here because everyone's
Mm.
afraid to shop. I want to
Right.
see everything right now. We're
Right.
doing cash only offers. So it was kind of interesting to see the different perspectives that they had. But I will say one thing, April 15th, I think it
Mm.
was, it might have been the 14th, we listed 10 properties,
Mm.
combination of sale and rent.
Okay.
Most of them are for rent. 8 out of 10
So
of them are off the market.
wow. Okay.
By the
Well.
first, we had at least half of them gone, and then as of last week, we're clearing up some things.
Right.
And for what it's worth, the stuff we put out there, there were people there. There were tenants, there were buyers, there were investors, there were title companies that have really changed gears very quickly, things that they would
Hmm.
have never done before. They're like, all of a sudden, we're going to do a video and I'm going to watch you sign and I'm going to
Right.
notarize that. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, they would have
That would have never
never done
happened.
anything like
Right.
that. Things that we
Right.
have been begging companies to start doing, title companies. Can my client please wire you the funds? So I
Right.
don't have to go chase a check and drive it to you and drop it off and wait for a deposit and wait for you to send me confirmation of deposit. It
Hmm.
was all this very unnecessary runaround that all of a sudden
Because they
people
had
can
to.
streamline.
Because they had to. They had no other
Right.
choice. You
But it
know.
also
But
goes to show that some of the risk that were associated with doing a streamlined process were really exaggerated,
right.
really
Right.
exaggerated.
Well.
So, I mean, to me, I think that some of the stuff that's come out of here, like how many times have you went to a meeting and you thought to yourself, wow, this really could have been an email?
Yeah.
Congratulations, they're now emails.
I hear that a lot right now.
They're
I'm
emails
starting to hear
now.
that a lot.
Or
So
how many times have you walked into a meeting that was really disorganized or really non-functional, and you're like, man, an outline for this meeting would have been great. But now you hop on Zoom and they have the outline available, and it's really, I think, pushed a lot of people to be the better version of themselves. Oh, you went on the conference call? Do you want? Can you see
huh?
this guy? Come
Oh
here,
no, I
come
can't. Oh, oh, see, hey, buddy, what's up? So so real quick for the people who are just so I have two things real quick for the people who are just joining. This is Agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007 with Should My Money Be Scared? And today we're speaking to Kyrs Housley, and we're talking about the landlord side and how it's being affected by
here.
COVID-19. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comment section and we can answer them for you. And um, quick shout out to my man Belize because he's using this as a. I'm gonna leave Belize alone. He said. He said. He said Christian's so fine, but we'll talk
Oh,
about that
thank
later.
you, Blaze.
That's
Is
my
Blaze
guy.
back, or are you in New York?
I don't. I think he's still in New York. That's my look. That's like my little brother right there. That's my man. Um.
Man,
So let's get
well, be
into it.
safe out there, Blaze.
Definitely, definitely. Let's get into it. My first question, because everyone's been waiting for you, right? Everyone's been
Mm-hmm.
waiting to hear from the landlord and the property management side, the short
Mm-hmm.
term leasing and the tenant placement. We've been waiting to hear this, right?
All
So
right.
I'm gonna get so I'm gonna get into it. The,
There.
yeah, he said he's still here. So, um, first, what are landlords doing about rent with this moratorium that we have, especially in Maryland? You have the moratorium on rents, and we can talk about the moratorium on foreclosures in a little bit as well. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as rents, what are landlords doing, and are tenants still paying? Are they using it as an opportunity not to pay? What are you seeing right now?
So I should start by saying that I have a property management company. We manage around 100 or so properties. It's a very small property management company. So I would say that my pool of expertise does come from what may be a smaller sample size than some of the larger property management companies. But
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, 100% of my properties that I manage are small portfolios for individual owners. They might own a property or two. I think
Mm-hmm.
the some of the largest stuff we have is like 10 to 15 properties. So we're not dealing with, big LLCs or huge portfolios that have 50 to 100 properties apiece.
Right.
Um, but it is all individual owners, all different tenants. And most of them don't have that flexibility because they only have one property or
Right.
two
Exactly.
properties. They don't have the flexibility to leverage other tenants paying rent across the board to all of their properties and all
Mm-hmm.
of the bills.
Right.
So I want to break it down between the short term rentals and the long term
Well,
rentals
let's
because
let's let's talk about the long term first, because that's the
yeah.
main. Right.
Okay, so the long term tenants to date in March, and forgive me because I don't have the exact statistics, but in March, I feel like if we have 100 doors, maybe 3 people didn't pay. There were a handful of people who were late.
Oh.
There
Mm-hmm.
were a handful of people
Right.
who were late, not the usual people who were late. And we
Mm-hmm.
actually sent out notices to tenants before to say, look, if you're going to have a problem with paying rent, please reach out to us. Let us know. We're all in this together type of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And a few reached out and said, look, there were a few days that were off. It's a little short. So next week, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. But overall, we only had about 3 that actually didn't pay. And I will tell you, the 3 that didn't pay were the band of usual suspects.
Right.
They were the opportunists who always send in the check on the 7th and
Mm-hmm.
swear they sent it on the 3rd. And they're the people who always have a story or a
Right.
reason, or it's always something. So honestly, it was the same people that I expect to be late every month, or to not pay every month, or to say, hey, well, you guys, my grass was cut 2 days later than it was supposed to be cut, so I believe I should get $20 off of rent, or like that group of
T-
people.
tell me that didn't really happen.
I got stories for days. I'm
Like,
dealing
look,
with,
I was in
oh
prop.
Lord.
I was in property management 15 years before I came on the
I'm sorry
investing
to hear
side.
that.
So look, well, I actually miss it sometimes though. I'm not gonna lie, I miss it sometimes. You know.
Well, I'll say that a property management is a very thankless role, unfortunately. If you do a great job and you get great tenants that don't cause you any headache, and you have a great property that is very little in repairs, the
Hmm.
owners feel like, what did I hire you for? Everything
Right.
seems to be going well. But
Right.
then if you get tenants that run into issues that you have to, fight with every month, the bills are being paid late, or water bills aren't getting paid, and you I mean, we have a very low eviction rate, but for if you have those problematic tenants, then it's like, what am I paying you for? I could find bad tenants by myself.
Right. Right.
So at the end of the day, it's really a very thankless role. And I can get into more of like why I chose this, if you like, but I don't want to digress too much
No,
from the point at hand.
it's okay. But we were talking about as far as people not paying, and I was
Hmm.
speaking to one of my investors the other day,
Hmm.
and he was asking me about, well, I'm buying this property, and what do I have to expect? What can I do to kind of protect myself? And one of the things I told him is, first of all, you go with the qualifications, right? You got to qualify the people that live there.
Hmm.
Most responsible people who are know I have to pay my bills every month. Most
Hmm.
responsible people, they want to pay their bills, you
Yeah.
know, and
And most people will make their rent their first priority.
as they
So if
should,
they
as they should.
have if they have $2,000 and their all their bills come to 1,000 and
Hmm.
their rent comes to 1,200, they will
Right,
pay their rent first and not pay like their cell phone bill this month, or
right.
um, whatever it might be. I've actually even tried to move to a model that we allow more paycheck to paycheck payments instead of like
Hmm.
once a month payments,
Right,
because with
right,
my short term, meaning like my month to month guys, they seem to be doing really well with that.
right.
So we're actually working on a way that would be clean and simple for anybody to go in and set up their monthly payments on a
Hmm.
paycheck to paycheck basis.
And that.
And
Mhm.
I think that that really helps, because sometimes, people aren't getting their full month's rent in one paycheck, or it's feast and famine. They have a full paycheck. One paycheck's amazing. The next all goes to rent. So they're hungry for the next week type of energy.
Well, and but the
Um,
other the other part, because I used to do short term rentals, right? I used to do
mhm,
like room rentals and things like that, and a lot of times in that particular space,
mhm,
you're also dealing with a lot of cash or people who may not be as responsible when it
mhm.
comes to, and that's one thing I would do. If they got paid on a weekly basis, then your rent is due every week. If they got paid on a buy, and it's right in line with how they got
Yeah,
paid, because now what happens is less the is less of a, how can I say it? If you can get to their money before they can, you're protecting them against their own money, so to speak.
yeah,
You
and
know,
and I'll tell you, especially because we're no longer a cash society. We're a cashless society where everyone
right,
pays with credit cards.
right.
The concept of how much money you have in your account, you're not checking to see if you have the rent money in your account until your rent is due.
Hmm.
Where you probably, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck, should be checking for your rent payment way before that. So,
Right.
you have a nice little cushion in your bank account. Maybe you're going to spend a little bit more, be a little bit more frivolous with your money. Where if when your money gets low, which we all do it,
Hmm.
especially real estate agents will, and a lot of people who don't have a balance on their bank account will say, oh, close the house. They're going out buying cars, and,
Right.
it's a great summer. Houses are
Right.
flying off the market. They're buying,
Right.
fancy
And
equipment, or, drones and cars and all this other stuff. And then it comes to December and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to get, gifts for my family.
right.
And I'm like, yeah, that $800 Lexus payment you picked up in July probably is really burning a hole in your bank account right now.
I'm gonna tell you
And
the I'm gonna tell you the excuse that I always laughed at when I was in property management, and that was when they would say, "Well, my paycheck and the rent don't fall in the same week." I'm like, "What? But the rent is due the same time every month. Like, I don't understand."
it's
But
it's money
right,
management.
right,
And
exactly.
And unfortunately, like a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm not talking just like the lowest of tax bracket. Even the higher you get, the
Oh
more money
yeah,
you spend. So there's a
yeah,
lot of people who make a lot of money and spend a lot of money, and we are in that a very interesting position where we get to see the behind the scenes on a lot of people's bank accounts.
right.
And I can't tell you the amount of times that I've sat down with a buyer, I've sat down with a seller, and they're bringing in all their documentation to sell their house, and they pull in a brand new car and name
Hmm.
brand everything, newest iPhone, this and that. And then I have to tell them, sorry, but I don't know that we're going to be able to help you because your DTI is through the roof right now.
Right, right.
You know, people picking up car payments more than house payments and this kind of thing. But, it's just being able to see someone's bank accounts. I tell everyone, if you want me to tell you what you think is important or what you find important, let me
Hmm.
look at your bank statement.
Right.
I can tell you. Which, if I see all you do is eat out, convenience is probably your biggest priority, which
So
may mean that buying a house isn't, or paying your rental time isn't.
I'm a fat
Right.
boy, so be careful, Chris. You know I love to eat. Be careful with that. So real quick, again, if you just joined the broadcast, you're watching Should My Money Be Scared with Agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007. And I am speaking with Kyrs Housley, and we're talking about landlords and COVID-19 on this
Mhm.
episode. And if you guys have any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer them for you. Hey, what's up, Frank? Frank is saying what's up to us. So
Okay.
now, since we're talking about tenants, um, with the qualifications that you're looking for, has it changed any since COVID-19, or has it been the same? How are you looking when it comes to qualifications for tenants?
Well, one thing I want to finish on the point in the
Sure,
last question. So,
sure.
April's rent was April's rent. We had like less than a handful of people who
Hmm.
didn't pay, and then May, everyone was really holding their breath, and I,
Right.
including talking to a few different tenants, and so far, I mean, normally we would be filing late rent downtown right now for everybody
Right.
who
Right.
didn't pay rent and everything. And we're not, for obvious reasons. But there were band of usual suspects and maybe one or two more.
Right.
And the one or two more was the same thing. Because April was weird, their money
Mm.
wasn't as much as they had expected.
Right.
Um, But then some of them got caught up too because they got the stimulus check or they
Hmm.
got some form of unemployment. And
Hmm.
I personally was really shocked, and I don't want to get into politics at all, but I was really shocked to find the amount of people who are or were making more money on unemployment than what they were making
Right.
on their
Right.
general work. I was talking to a friend of mine who owns a business and a massage parlor and nail salon, and she gave everyone this great news that she had got the payroll thing, so she was going to be able to pay everyone. And her
Hmm.
staff was upset with her. Her staff was all upset with her. They said we were making more money on unemployment. We didn't have to go to work. We
Yeah.
would have just preferred to ride out unemployment, which I don't know. I don't know if it just says something about the state of the economy or not, but there were a lot of people who got caught up. There were a lot of people who were actually paying down bills that they couldn't get caught up with because the bonus, that stimulus check, really helped them catch up on stuff,
Hmm.
which was really good. So in the month of May, we had like four. I think we only have four people who didn't pay, and two or the people who are always late, that whatever,
Right.
who were probably up for eviction anyway, if we have to be
You,
frank about it. But everybody
you know,
else paid.
this time is definitely an interesting time because, and I feel like I say this on every show. This is something that we've never seen before, and really, no
Hmm.
one has the answers as to how to move. Right?
The
Because
stimulus checks definitely helped.
right,
At
but
least my clients, especially the ones in rentals that are under about 1,500,
mhm,
um, they really helped.
right.
They really helped everyone. Um, but what was the question I said I was going to get back
Uh,
to? Sorry.
so it's okay. Like I told
Sorry.
you, I don't try to be perfect at all. So we're fine. But
Yeah.
well, with COVID-19,
Yeah.
how has the qualifications
Qualification
for right, the
changed. Right.
qualifications for your tenants, have they changed, or are you still doing the same thing? What are you doing?
So it's a kind of a combination. So as you can imagine, we've always looked at credit, but we've never had a very specific credit score. We
Mm-hmm.
generally shy away from anyone under 600, but for what it's worth, if we look at someone's credit and they had an unpaid Sprint bill from 97, we're not going to hold it against them.
Right,
There's a
right.
lot of people, especially in the under 1200 range, that just don't have credit, or the little things that they do have is because they didn't pay a phone bill or
Mm-hmm.
changed from Comcast to Verizon or something
Right,
like that.
right.
So, we're not going to hold that kind of stuff against anybody. So credit has stayed the same. Income, we have never accepted any type of temporary income
Mm-hmm.
as an income qualifier.
Okay.
So, for instance, if somebody got temporary cash assistance of like $500 a month,
Right,
we would never consider that towards their income.
right.
We've never considered unemployment towards income.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if your income letter says you're going to get it for 16 weeks. I don't do
Right,
16-week leases.
right.
So I can't rent to somebody who has any type of temporary income. Side jobs that are undocumented or inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't consider those.
Right.
So people who were looking to get out of their parents' house because they're driving each other crazy would say, well, I started delivering groceries during the pandemic, so I can consider that income, right? And no, I can't. Now,
Right.
on the other hand, if you do Uber regularly, then you
Mm-hmm.
can show us where you have been doing Uber. Typically, we would look for longer than 9 months. We used to do a year, but it's a little
Right,
newer, I guess. So a lot of people
right.
are doing that, and grocery shopping and things like that. If
Mm-hmm.
taking care of elders, there's a lot of jobs that people aren't necessarily paid paychecks or like
Right.
above the
I
table.
know. Right. Exactly. I know what you mean.
You see this guy? So,
He's a
um,
star.
exactly. So generally speaking, we're looking for non-secondary income options.
Mm-hmm.
We still are not taking unemployment. So, people say, I want to move. I'm getting unemployment of $1,000 a week. And
Mm-hmm.
these crazy unemployment numbers that I was really surprised by. Again, making more money than they would have made at work. They said,
Right.
I literally, and I don't know if you saw, I posted about this. I had a guy, I think I posted the screenshot of it, but he texted me. He said, I'd like to move into this place. I'm making $1,000 a week on unemployment. And I said, we normally don't lend to that. He goes, honestly, I'm looking for a short-term rental. If I could just do month to month, I don't know how long I'm going to be making this much money, but I'd like to live in a nice place while I have the money. And the honesty of it, just like
Right.
the pure and sheer honesty, like, look, I don't make enough money to live in a nice place, but right now I do.
Right.
So I'm just
I'm gonna
like,
take advantage of it while I can.
yeah, I'm like, I wish I could help you. I really, I want to help. I wanted to help him.
So,
But again, the unemployment thing, we don't use temporary income. Um, there have been, because of the stimulus checks, there have been a lot of people who have the savings for security deposits
mm-hmm.
that haven't moved because they don't have security deposit to move.
Mm-hmm.
So that has probably been the most interesting for me. Uh,
Okay.
Dealing with various population of people who say, "Hey, me, like I've been staying with this person, but me and my brother are going to get a place together," and maybe they're not strong candidates,
Mm-hmm.
but what we do is double security deposit. That's something
Right.
we've been doing for forever. Someone
Right.
that's not strong, you take a double security deposit, and now a lot of people have it where they wouldn't have had it before,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably been the biggest change, honestly, is that we've been doing a lot of double security deposits, accepting people who really want to move but maybe don't have the strongest applications in the world.
Right.
Um, stable employment is something that we're looking for. And as we're verifying income, and there's a lot of people who may be out of work, we have a couple of daycare providers
Right.
that recently said, look, our daycare numbers are down. We don't have the numbers that we usually do. This is what our numbers usually look like. This is, this and that. And they say,
Well,
double security deposit.
let's stay there for a moment, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about employment, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Because we also have a question from well, actually two questions from Frank, but
Mm-hmm.
to lead to his question, what do you do in a situation where you have someone that has stable employment today, they move
Mm-hmm.
in, and then next week they get furloughed, which means that more than likely they're not going to be able to pay the rent the following
Mm-hmm.
month. Um, what are you doing in those situations where a tenant is not able to pay rent? Um,
Right.
well, how are you guys getting around that?
So if you're talking about from a placement standpoint,
Well,
um,
let's talk from both, from a placement and also from the
okay.
landlord
So
standpoint.
anytime you place a tenant, you run the risk of them losing their job.
Right.
There's very few jobs that are ironclad. What you're looking for in job security is that they've been at a place for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're staying at the same level or going up.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, we run into people who were like the director of something and now they've been demoted to something, which
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is a sign of them being on the way out. But
Right.
realistically, you're looking for somebody who has really stable employment for a very long time, and their employer is close to the address.
Okay.
So if someone says, hey, I want this place, I work down the street, those are usually really solid people. People who are moving to be closer to their job
Right.
usually shows a certain level of job security that I don't know that you would really get that measure anywhere else. But
Mm-hmm.
also if they've worked somewhere for 7, 8, 9 years, what's the likelihood of them leaving or getting fired? Probably slim to none. Now,
Right.
this whole concept of furlough and unemployment around COVID, some jobs you can tell maybe at a little bit more higher risk. For instance, if you're a massage therapist, you may be a little bit higher risk than somebody
Right.
who
Don't
is,
don't
the
touch me right now.
director of. Yeah, exactly. So we are asking everybody, how have you been impacted by COVID? Not have you, but how have you?
Right.
Do you have any uncertainty about your job? And people are very upfront for the most part when we're asking
Mm-hmm.
the questions. They, oh, I haven't been impacted at all. Some things that you would think would be impacted, like we have a few people who we recently moved in that work for daycares. So
Mm-hmm.
daycares are a little hit or miss. The bigger the daycare, the more secure, I
Right.
guess they tend to be.
Right.
So just based on the industry that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in food service and retail are out right now. We haven't got a lot of applications from them, though. I got to be honest. I think a lot of them are sitting still right now.
Right.
Um, the people in the household, there's very few rentals we have that there's only one source of income coming in the house, though, for what it's worth. And the applications, that is something that we look for too, is multiple sources of revenue for income. If it's two adults moving in with each other versus one adult bringing in income, and then what they do for a living.
So we have a question, but I want to bring up a point
Mm-hmm.
that I never really thought about, and that's why I love having conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
The point that I never thought about is taking in consideration that potential tenant who is moving closer to that job, looking at the
Mm-hmm.
stability. I never thought
Mm-hmm.
about that as part of a qualification.
I
But
mean,
we
at
have
least tells you they're serious about their job. Now, how
exactly.
serious their job is about them, we'll never know. Who knows?
That's any relationship. Okay.
Exactly.
But so we have a question. We have actually a statement from Keisha. Hey Keisha, and she's saying that she's having a problem with her deficiency, and right now is hard to collect rent. What is it for a landlord who's having a problem collecting rent right now? You have any recommendations, any suggestions that you could give any landlords based off of that?
Empathy. And I know that that's like the exact opposite of what we usually do. You
Right.
know, when people don't pay, we bring down the hammer. We are court, file, this, that, threatening emails and
Right.
letters, that kind of thing. We're not doing any of that right now. We are progressing with empathy. Like,
Hmm.
hey, you know, especially good paying tenants. The
Right.
opportunists are the opportunists. So you just
Right.
have to there's nothing you can do or say to make the chronic late, chronic wrong and loud, chronic it's always everybody else's fault.
Right.
There's nothing you can do about them. They were
That's a
that before
personality disorder.
COVID.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They're going to be that way their whole life. But for the people who are tenants who really have paid on time, and like you had said earlier, people for the most part want to pay their rent on time.
Hmm.
So we lead with empathy. What's going on? How can we help?
Right.
Resources. There's a lot of different resources out right now that'll help with rent. So
Hmm.
putting them, doing your own research, and you're helping them to help yourself. So
Right.
do some research. What are some programs that they can do? I may be able to send you a couple of things, Cory, like especially if they have children and
Hmm.
families. There's some different grant programs that are available. You just state why you were impacted, how you were impacted, and you fill out a form online. It may take 30 days or so to process, but
Hmm.
you know that's money that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So there are some like grant programs and just programs to help people who need the help.
Hmm.
But as far as what you can control as a landlord, I'm really sorry that you have been impacted by COVID. You're a very good tenant of ours, and we want to see you win. What can we do to help?
Right.
Right?
Hmm.
Most people aren't going to be bold enough to come out and say, well, you shouldn't let us pay rent, right?
Right. Right.
What can
Because
we do to help? Why don't we do this? What can you afford to pay right now?
exactly. Right.
What can you afford to pay? Well, I can pay this. I can pay that. Okay. How about I'll meet you halfway? For every dollar you pay, now this is really private. If you're a private owner,
Yeah.
a private landlord,
Definitely.
not
Right.
we as property management can't do this, but I've done this for my personal investment properties.
Hmm.
For every dollar that you pay, I will give you 10%. I will match you 10% forgiveness on rent for everything that you can pay.
Okay.
And that's got people to pay. I have
Wow.
I have one rental. It was $1,200, and I said, you know, I'm willing to offer some forgiveness if you can get me whatever, because keep in mind, you paying rent is what helps me pay the bills, pays the mortgage, pays
Right.
to keep the yard done, and I want to keep my contractors employed. I want to keep the yard mowed. I want to keep all these things
Well.
going in your house nice. And he said, well, I could probably pay 1,000. I said, if you pay 1,000, I'll give you a $200 forgiveness.
So this is what I'm gonna do right now, because no, I'm gonna treat this like I'm DJing, and how I talk
Mm-hmm.
to my people that's on live when I'm DJing. If based off of what she's saying right now, because I've never heard that suggestion before, and I can get with that, because what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying is something is better than nothing in this situation, and we're trying to help
Yeah.
one another. So if
Yeah,
you're
it's a we're in this together.
if you're a landlord and you're on my live right now, two
Mm-hmm.
things. Two things. I'm gonna make it like this. If you're a landlord and you're on my live right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you like what Chris just said, helping the tenant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give a little discount for every dollar that you can pay. Yeah, I give a discount. If you like
Mm-hmm.
that, put a hands up in my comments. Put a hands up emoji in my comments. And when Chris sends me the information to help tenants with these
Mm-hmm.
programs that helps tenants, what I'll do is I'll get in contact with whoever put a hand up in my emoji in my comments, and I'll send you the information as well.
Yeah, a couple of links that would be good. I'll tell you what often happens is private landlords. It's very, you know, especially for people who only have one or two investments and don't have these massive portfolios. It's
Right.
very personal to us. So you would say, how dare you not pay your rent? I give
Hmm.
you a good house. I invested good money. You know,
Right.
that's my retirement plan, whatever it
Hmm.
might be. How dare you not pay rent? I've been so good to you.
Hmm.
And it's very personal.
Right.
But on the other side of it, they don't want to, it's not like they don't want to pay their rent. It's typically that they can't pay their rent. especially if they've been good paying renters the whole rest of the time, you haven't had any issues with them. I would say this, how much is it going to cost you to replace that tenant? Because
Right.
when you get into a
Yes.
bad relationship with a good tenant, it's
Yes.
all just going to go south. And then when this is all said and done, they're going to move out. And now you're losing how many months rent just because a relationship that could have been kept up here came
It
down here.
it
So
takes it takes more money to turn. Like I said, we speak the same language here, and it takes more money to turn a unit, find a new tenant, get that tenant. Think about it. Think about
mhm.
everything that goes in when you're talking about a a new tenant versus a current tenant, especially a current
Just
tenant who's been
turnover
paying.
time alone.
Right.
Even
Exactly.
let's say that they were great tenants and they left it sparkling and you don't have to do any repairs. You're still talking about losing a month or two on placement, just 2 months rent.
Right.
So if you're charging, just rough numbers, if you're charging $1,000 a month and somebody says, I can really only pay $500 a month. You say, this is what I'll do. I'm going to give you a $50 credit because I appreciate that you were doing all that you can do. So I'm going to do all that I can do. I'm going to give you $50 off of the rent this month. And I really appreciate you keeping me in the loop on what's going on in your life. I
Right.
really appreciate you paying anything that you really are paying. It's the exact opposite of how we typically approach this
Right.
non-payment of rent. But I promise you, it will take you so much further than getting into like a back and forth with them
Right.
or creating a kind of an adversarial relationship with your tenant.
This is a situation that no one expected. So
Mm-hmm.
it's no one's fault. It's not
No.
is
Mm-mm.
so that with that being said, therefore we have to work together. And the thing about it, when we're talking about the expenses of finding a new tenant, first you're talking about the money that you lost from them not paying. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the fact of, like you said, the 2 months that it takes to find a new tenant. You're talking
Yeah.
about if you have to take them to court. Also the repair costs. And hopefully, they're not really mad at you. So when they
Right.
move out, you know what I'm saying? When they
They
move
don't
out,
stuff up the bathtub and leave the
right?
water run.
Look, look. We could talk about a whole bunch of those stories. I have a whole bunch of them.
All
Get
I'm
worse
saying
than that.
is it is in everyone's best interest to maintain a healthy working relationship with your tenants.
Exactly.
And I really
Exactly.
try to. I had a conversation with a tenant this morning and he was like, maybe when this is all said and done, we can like sit down and chop it up.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we you're doing the best that you can do right now. I
And,
mean,
and,
I think we all are.
and by doing what you're saying as well, you're
Mhm.
also that rapport, that relationship becomes stronger.
It's
And
humanhood. You see the
exactly,
humanhood in each other to say,
exactly,
I want to keep your water on, but the way that my family eats, if you don't pay rent, I won't be able to.
right.
It's like the human of your landlord.
Hmm.
So many people see their landlord was like, well, you not only own multiple homes, but I own none. So
Right.
therefore you can afford to do things that I can't do. You can go a month without rent. And the
E-
fact of the matter is that's just not the case. There's a lot of
right.
people who are landlords by force, meaning that they
Hmm.
bought in the height of the market, they don't have the
Hmm.
equity in their house to sell, or
Hmm.
there was a situation that didn't allow them to sell, and congratulations, they have an investment property, or
Right.
they otherwise are landlords by force. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
Hmm.
It's a symbiotic relationship for tenant and landlord. It's a give and take, and they both benefit from it. And it should be treated as such,
Right.
not like a parasitic relationship or even a relationship where it's like domination relationship. And
Yeah. Yeah. In
sometimes
my
you have,
house. Yeah. In
yeah,
my house.
sometimes you have tenants that use it as an opportunity to like boss up for no reason.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes you have landlords that are the same way. And it's, I mean, some of the issues that we run into, even with landlords, they that feel that they're better than the tenants for some reason. Like,
Yeah.
you lived in this house too.
Exactly.
Or even if
Exactly.
you never would, else is living here. I can't let their toilet leak into the middle of their living room because they're paying cheap rent.
Somebody
Mm-mm.
when I somebody told me a while ago when I first started in property management,
Mm-hmm.
and the way he put it, I didn't agree with it, but I understood what he was saying, because what he said was,
Mhm.
he's like, you guys are like God, you control how I live. And I'm like, okay, we're not like God, but I definitely understand that, when you walk into your home,
Mhm.
something that may not be important to us is
Mhm.
important to, that's how your comfortability when you walk in a house, and I
Yeah.
have to take that in consideration. How would I want to live? So let me make sure those things are taken care
But I
of.
think the opposite of that is true too, where I think there are some cases where a landlord would say the tenants are like gods because they control so much of their life. Because without the tenant, they would have a $1,500 a month mortgage over their head that they couldn't afford if it weren't occupied,
That's only
you
if you're a
know,
Baltimore City landlord.
or or a certain lifestyle. Maybe like, how many people own multiple, and that is paying where they live, right?
So,
So
only listen, only Baltimore City landlords feel like that the tenants are gods. And
that's
if
the
you
Baltimore City court system that
e-
makes
e-
the tenants on
e-
God position.
exactly, if you're a landlord in Baltimore City, you'll understand my joke here.
And
Even though it's a
even
bad one.
the most recent addendum. So I now have to give all of my Baltimore City tenants a piece of paper that tells them how to not have to pay me rent.
Mm-hmm.
In what universe do we live in? Am I now
Now,
required to coach my tenants
for
into
the
not paying rent?
real quick for
What's going on?
the new investors, or the investors who don't understand that what just happened, explain that to my people. Explain that.
There is an addendum that is required for all Baltimore City leases, and it's quiet. I feel like they haven't really gone out of their way to really let homeowners know what their obligations are to their tenants. But there is now an addendum that must be attached to all Baltimore City leases that essentially states they understand that just because they get behind on rent doesn't mean that they have to leave or that they're eligible for eviction. It's like, here's all the resources to not pay rent,
Right.
giving phone numbers, email addresses, free lawyers to keep your land. Like, it's
Right.
so stupid and just.
And that's how you create those professional tenants. Like for instance, there are landlord investors who ride around with numbers in their car, that the house numbers in their cars,
Yep.
because when you go and evict a tenant, they'll remove one of the numbers. And now if the sheriff comes up and one of the numbers is
Yep.
removed, now they have to cancel the eviction. So now the landlord goes over before the eviction, and like, oh, you think, let me put that right back up. It's just so.
Well, I
I
will
got.
tell you, as an investor, when I see numbers missing,
Uh-huh.
I'm automatically looking for the owner's phone number because I know they're having problems with their tenants. I just assume that it's gameplay. And I call
It,
the owner and say, hey, I'm an investor here in Baltimore and you're probably having tenant issues. I would be
it,
happy to take this property off of
it,
your hands.
if you guys are listening, Chris is dropping gems here. So, and look, I'm a rebroadcast this later. Chris is dropping some gems over here. Yeah.
Hey, any sign of problematic tenants is fine with me. I can get them out of there, but as part of our property management, we keep attorneys that handle this professionally and legally because it's a circus, it's a rodeo in there,
Right.
and as much as I can be familiar with a rodeo, I don't ride bulls. I pay the people who know how to ride bulls to ride the
Right.
bulls,
Exactly.
and that's it. And if there's tons of stuff that people can do on their own, but Baltimore City is such a tenant leaning place, and I can't tell you how many portfolios in the past 2 years that I've sold on behalf of investors who say I can't do Baltimore anymore. Between the water
Right.
bills, the
Mm-hmm.
tenants, the laws, the
Right.
court system, the lack of support from the police when it comes to anything having to do with domestic.
Right.
Um, I get it. Like I get it. At the same time, one of the few places left in the United States where you can invest in under 50,000
Right,
and produce
exactly.
an income off of a
And
property.
and
So,
that's the catch 22. Real quick. First,
mhm.
yet again, this is Cory Banks, agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007 with Should My Money Be Scared? And today we have Kyrs Housley, and we're talking about the effects of COVID-19 on the landlord buying, holding, and the real estate. Let me ask you a quick question because we're getting close to our time, and we're just
Oh.
started. We had some other stuff to dig
Sorry.
into. No, it's okay. I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and and we have some things that we're just starting to dig into. So let me ask you a question: Are you available? Are you available on Wednesday around the same time?
Wednesday. Yes. Yeah. I
All
can
right.
do Wednesday.
Would you mind having a part two? I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to my people, right? I'm gonna go back to
Hmm.
my people. So if you're listening right now, and because we have so much more to dig into. If you want a part two on Wednesday, hands up in the comments. Put thumbs up in my comments right now if you want the part two of this on Wednesday. Thumbs up in my comments. Thumbs up in the comments.
I wish
And
I could see the comments.
oh, go look. I'm gonna tell you what I do. I'm gonna give my secrets. I'm gonna give one of my secrets on.
This is the first time using this program too. I'm actually very like we'll have to have a off record conversation
Oh
about
yeah,
this. So because I really like it, and me, I'm queen of efficiency. I love this.
yeah. Look,
It's
I love.
broadcasting to all platforms right now.
I can broadcast to different platforms.
Uh,
Yes, and the thing about it, it came out of uh because I
Necessity.
could. You're right because I'm like how. It's like how can I do this? And knowing I spent the whole weekend, and that's what I do. I'll go find stuff, and that's
I love it.
but but I forgot what I was saying. Dag on it, Chris.
Me
But
seeing comments.
um, but yeah, so if you guys, so I had some thumbs up for Wednesday part two, and
Okay.
we're down. Okay, we're down for part
Yeah,
two.
count me in. We
Okay.
can really break it down. I think one thing that my perspective and my view
Mm-hmm.
on so much of this stuff tends to be at more of like a bird's eye angle because I'm not just doing retail, I'm not just doing property management, I'm not just doing investing.
Right.
It's a little bit of everything, and because it's constant conversations happening in all the different groups,
Mm-hmm.
um, and all the different players, it is really hard to take all of that and kind of cram it into an hour session.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Especially
think
when,
part two would be
es-
great.
especially when in my opinion, the buy and hold side of real estate has been affected more than anyone else because you have so many people
Hmm.
Can you hear me? Give me a
Yeah,
second.
there
Hold
you
on.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got back.
So yeah, we have some technical problems here, but we deal with them, right?
You're
But
fine, Teddy.
um, but I feel like the buy and hold section of real estate has been affected a whole lot more than
Hmm.
anything because you're talking about moratoriums on rent. You're talking about
Yeah,
now, but on the flip side, you're also talking about moratoriums on foreclosures.
foreclosures.
So it's like so now
Yeah,
the question is, does it balance one another out? Or and we can and you know what? We can get into that. This is this is
that's
this is
such a tough one
this might be a cliffhanger right
because
here. I'm gonna have a
uh,
cliffhanger on my show.
okay.
Will will Chris answer the question Wednesday at 4 o'clock?
Tune in Wednesday. Same
Right.
same bat
Same
time, same bat channel.
agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007. But yeah, I mean, but that's definitely a question that a lot of
Mhm.
people want to know because does it balance out? When you're talking about the moratorium on rent, can't can't put people out, right? Can't really enforce it. Then you have, like I said, the moratorium, which is mainly affecting the single, the
Yeah.
landlords that don't have as many properties versus the big conglomerates, big companies or whatever, right? Um,
They always say in a shift, it's the people in the middle that get squished.
right,
The people
right,
on the end that, don't have any, or maybe one are fine. The
Mm-hmm.
people who have like just a handful, that's like the balance is like, we really can't go too long without people paying rent. These are the
Mm-hmm.
people that are really in trouble right now.
Right.
And I've even had conversations with investors to say, should I just go ahead and call my mortgage provider and tell them I've been impacted by COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Or should I call and refinance and take all the equity out of the house I possibly can, just in case I need a safety net? Just in case it really
Right.
does get ugly and I don't want to lose my houses, maybe the equity, the cash that's in the house, that's in the
Mm-hmm.
form of equity right now, needs to be liquidated so
Mm-hmm.
that I can pay for the house in the event that the tenant stop paying, right? And then, the people who have 20 or 30, usually you can leverage the people who pay and the people who don't. I mean,
Right.
I've even had I had one tenant call me and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be a little late on my rent this month." And typical,
Right.
one of the usuals. But I was wondering, what have you heard about this holdout on rent? Like, what are you talking about? Well,
Right.
I heard that people are, the city's coming down with a rent strike.
A
You did?
restaurant.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I mean, this is like 100 so properties, and this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Right.
Are you telling me that you're not going to pay rent, or are you asking me if you should not pay rent? Like, what are you trying to get here? She goes, oh, no, no, no. I just want to
Yeah.
talk to you about it. And I said, well, as of
Yeah.
right now, this is a private tenant of mine.
Right.
I said, as of right now, everyone has paid their rent. I've received every dime from every tenant except for $65,
Mm-hmm.
which was exactly how short she was in rent. Which is the nicest way for me to tell her, you are the only one who has not paid your rent. And she, she ended up paying it, but she's one of the usual suspects.
Right. 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 Like I said, most responsible people want to pay their bills. So
Yeah.
this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna end it right here. Since we're gonna do part two. We're gonna do part two on Wednesday at four
Part
o'clock.
two.
Part two. And
Okay.
and when I do the flyer, I'll make sure I'll get the name. I'll just
Yeah,
put
let me know.
Chris.
Happy
Yeah.
to broadcast it. But thanks so
Right.
much for having me as a guest. I
No,
appreciate
thank
it. I
you.
appreciate
Look,
the time and your
Chris,
viewers.
I've been waiting for you. Okay, I've been
I'm
waiting
happy
to
to
have this.
help.
I've been waiting to have this. And Chris is very hard to get in contact. I'm like, see, look, I'm gonna call you back. So I'm like, Chris doesn't love me
My
anymore.
auto response says, call me back at 15. It doesn't say I will call you back at 15.
Look, I, I I have stuff happening too, Chris. You know,
I
we
know. I
all
believe
busy.
you. I
No,
believe you.
so but
I do
Wednesday,
respond, not immediately, but I do
yeah,
respond to all
yeah,
messages.
Chris is great. She's great. But Wednesday, 4 o'clock, right here. Agent Cory Banks, Realtor 007. Should my money be scared? We're gonna do part two of dealing with the landlords. How COVID-19 is affecting the buy and hold
Mhm.
with my girl Kyrs Housley, and I greatly appreciate you. I greatly
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. See you
All right.
Wednesday.
See you Wednesday.